And welcome back. Welcome back to That Sounds Gay, I'm In. I'm Cy.
And I'm Matt.
And this week we are talking about labels.
Absolutely. Labels are so important. And so we're going to get into it this week.
And welcome back. So Matt has decided to join us this week to tell us about the importances of labels and their usages in day-to-day life.
Yeah, so Frank Tannenbaum was from the mid-1900s, and he came up with the labeling theory. So the labeling theory is basically you call me this, and so you can't hurt, I call me this because you're calling me that, so you can't hurt me like that. So basically, people used to call us queers, and that was a derogatory term. And so in the mid 1980s, we took the term back and started calling ourselves queer. And so you can't hurt us by calling us queer anymore because we're calling ourselves queer. And so we kind of took that term back, and we even put it in the Q, right? Q means queer. So we took that term completely back. So you can't hurt us by calling us queer anymore. That's part of the labeling theory. But if you look at labels, dad, brother, sister, lawyer, podcaster, kid, banker, gamer, these are all labels that we have in life. And labels are important.
I mean, they do definitely, at the very least, tell or give us ways to explain to people what we do in simpler terms, like saying you're a doctor or something like that. But then they, of course, have much more advanced terms too, like talking about labels as in he or pronouns and
Right, but it also gives you a sense of community, because if you say label like family, or even say label like LGBTQ community, that gives you a sense of belonging, a sense of group. Even if you say gay, I mean, you have that group that's around you. So labels are important. Or even if you say nephew, I mean, that means that, there's an uncle involved. There's a dad involved, a mom involved. There's a sense of belonging. Or even if you say swimmer, there's other swimmers around. That puts you in a category. That puts you in a sense of community and belonging. So labels are important. And so it's not just the queer community. I hear all the time, why do you have so many labels in the queer community? Well, there's labels in the world, not just within the queer community. But today we're going to talk about the queer community, and not just the queer community. I want to say that a lot of these labels are that I'm going to talk about today, and we're going to talk about today, are also in the heterosexual cis community as well. And they intermix. And it's not just one community versus the other community. Because we have the label heterosexual. I mean, that's an important label. If you call yourself heterosexual and you are heterosexual, means just very simply that you identify sexually and romantically attracted to the opposite gender. That's what it means. But if I'm a man that is sexually and romantically attracted to the opposite gender, but I go and have sex with a man and I still identify as heterosexual, that's my identity. And your identity is important. And so much so that there's medical terms and there's terms within our community that you can still identify as heterosexual and have sex outside of that category, because
experimenting is a thing.
Yeah, and not only that, but there's medical terms, men that have sex with men and women who have sex with women and still identify as heterosexual, because how you identify is important. So we allow you to identify how you want to identify, because how you identify is your choice. Case in point, period. So if you're bi-curious, there's a term, there's a label, and you still identify as heterosexual, then that's your identity and you're allowed to have it. And we're not going to take that away from you just because you have a drunken night and have sex with a man. We're not going to switch you over to label gang.
These are now physical labels. You will have it physically taken away from you and given a different one entirely.
Right. Yeah, we're going to send you out a card. But yeah, let's get into it and talk about some of these labels. So, we always talk about the simple labels like lesbian and gay. A lesbian is a woman who, identifies as a female and is only attracted to other females. Gay is simply somebody who identifies as a male and is only attracted to other males. But then we have a bisexual and pansexual. I like to talk about the differences and the similarities between those two. There's a lot of debate about the differences and between pansexual and bisexual. And I've done the research on it. And basically what it is before the internet, bisexual was created in this part of the world and pansexual was created in this part of the world. And they mean basically the same thing. And when we got the internet, we went, crap, there's two labels and people are labeling themselves differently for the same thing. And that's okay. You can pick the label that you want. And which basically they both mean that are attracted to either males or females or somebody who identifies as another gender or no gender at all. And it's not always 50-50. It's more than you're attracted to more than one gender. And that's okay.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so
my husband still technically identifies as a bisexual man, even though he is married to a guy.
right. And that's important. Just here's the deal. If you are a man or a woman and you're in a straight relationship or a gay relationship, doesn't matter.
I love how you got the
And you're
quotation marks for both.
quote, yeah, because it's like straight relationship, gay relationship. It doesn't matter. If you're in a relationship with somebody, it doesn't change your label. And I'll have somebody say, well, there's a straight couple at Pride. Yeah, one of them might be trans and one of them might be bi, or they both might be bi. You don't know what their labels are, and so you can't dictate why they're there.
Pride's kind of also evolved a little bit outside of just being sexuality now. It's kind of involved a lot of lifestyles as well.
Yes. Yeah. And we're going to get into some of those lifestyles as well. But, so the longest acronym I found on the internet, and I want you all to memorize this. This is important. We're going to test on this. It's LGBTQIAA2SPD.
PDF.
Yeah. PDF.
Sorry.
Yeah. So no, I don't memorize that. I say the queer community. And I have my best buddy he likes me to say it like this. He is white heterosexual cis, but he says LGBTQIA+. And he can say that real good. And I'm proud of him. I say queer community. I would never expect somebody to say LGBTQIA2SPD+. And I have to look at it to say it. And what that stands for is lesbian, gay, bi, transgender, transsexual, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, ally, two-spirit, pansexual, demisexual plus. And there's more. So we don't want to exclude anybody, but it's a lot.
I'm sorry, I just have to say this really quickly. There was this person that tried pronouncing that.
It's Legibidiqua.
Premium.
Legibidiqua.
Yep. That is the way that that's the way I refer to the queer community.
It's the Legibidiqua community.
But I want to hear somebody try to pronounce that.
Right. So then we go into the T's, which is transgender. So a transgender person does not identify with how the doctor identified them at birth. There's three ways that the doctor can identify you at birth, which is a male, female, or intersex. And if you don't agree with that, then you are transgender. Then after that, you have queer and questioning. Queer is so I'm queer. That's how I label myself. And what queer means is you're in the community, but you don't want to put yourself in a box. And it means that you are not heterosexual or not cis. You can be cis and not heterosexual, or you can be not heterosexual and not cis. You're just in the community. And that's what queer is. You're in the community. Questioning is, you're in the community, but you just don't know quite where. A lot of people start out in that queue. Some people stay in that queue, and that's okay. You're just questioning and you're in the community. I asked a young person one time, I said, hey, are you in the community? And they said, I'm the queue that's questioning. He said, I fit somewhere. I just don't know where. And I said, we have a label for that. And that's called questioning. The I is the intersex. We talked about that. And then we have asexual, which is, I'm in the asexuals. The asexual has some subcategories, several of them. We're not going to get into all of them, but asexual is somebody that, has no sexual or limited sexual attraction, but can be romantically interested in others. So I dated an asexual person once, and we never had a kiss. We never had sex, but we dated for 3 years until they passed away. And I'm still the father of their child, stepchild, obviously. and they're 22. I got them when they were 16. And maybe they're going to be 20. Wait, it might be older than that. They grew up, and he's great. He is a trans man, and his name is Sebastian. He's flipping wonderful. But his mother was asexual, and we had a wonderful relationship until she passed away. But we had an amazingly romantic relationship that, asexual people deserve romance. Just because they're not sexual doesn't mean they don't.
And
But
that is, of course,
underneath,
different than demisexual, which is where you where you don't have any sexual attraction to somebody
demi-romantic.
until, yeah.
No, demi-romantic. So I want to go into those. Demisexual is somebody that needs the romantic attraction before the sexual. So that's what I am. So I'm underneath the asexual, which is where I need to have the romance before I have the sexual attraction. So I need to be friends and build up to the romance. Then you have demi-romantic is somebody that needs the sex before they have the romance. And those are not queer terms. And I wish people would get over that, because straight heterosexual people are and can be demisexual and demi-romantic. I know a lot of heterosexual men that could really come out as demi-romantic, where they need the sex before they have the romance. And I think that that's important. Where they need to have the sexual relationship before they can get into the romantic relationship. And if they were honest about that, I think that would solve a lot of problems. And it's valid. It's valid to form a sexual relationship before you form a romantic relationship. And if you have that need, it's valid to form that and express that. And there's a lot of demi-romantics out there that could really, express that, and that's completely valid. And then there's aromantics, which have no interest in romance and have all interest in sex, and that's completely valid too.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, and so that is completely valid and completely okay. And that's just somebody that wants sexual relationships with somebody but has no ability or interest for romance, and that's valid. And again, that's not a queer term. And like I said, we're going to talk about terms today that are not just queer terms. And I want people to understand that if the straight community would use some of these terms, I think it would solve a lot of issues.
At the very least, bridge some gaps.
Yes. And that's why I think labels are important. And then I want to talk about bi-curious again. Now, that's somebody who's mostly straight, but are curious about a romantic or sexual attraction to the same gender. And again, you might not want to have a romantic attraction to the same gender, but you want to have sex with the same gender. And, you can be bi-curious.
Mpox symptoms can appear as fever, chills, rash, and swollen lymph nodes. If you notice any of these signs, get tested right away. Early detection is key. Stay informed, stay safe. For more information, please visit your primary physician. I think it was Honey Boo Boo. It was some child celebrity that said everybody's a little bit gay. And to an extent that everybody has attraction to people. You don't, just because you're not sexually attracted to that other guy that's walking down the street, you can still say, that suit looks very good. He looks very handsome. You don't have to say, oh, I would like to do X and X and X and thing with him. It's not.
Right. Well,
and
everything's on a spectrum, though, Sai. I mean, because you have physical attraction and you have emotional attraction that's on a spectrum. So you can be physically attracted to the opposite sex and you be openly or emotionally attracted to the same sex. And so you can have a guy who's physically attracted to women but emotionally attracted to men. And so he needs to have a sexual attraction or a sexual relationship with women but have an emotional attraction to men. And so he has to have that emotional attraction to his buddies. And so, I mean, everything's on a spectrum. So your emotional attraction and your physical attraction might not match up to the same sex. And so everything's on a spectrum. So you say everybody's a little gay, doesn't mean you're sexually attracted to the same person that you're mentally attracted to or the same sex. And so, everything's a spectrum. So you might be a little gay, but not sexually. You might think that, your buddy has a nice ass, but you don't want to have sex with them.
And I mean, those are all very normal. You see it presented more often in women, I've noticed, than men. And I feel like that has a lot to do with gender norms and how society has kind of placed roles on specific gender positions. Because like you'll see, it's almost a trope now that women going to the bars will like start making out with each other to draw the attention of guys. They are not interested in each other in the slightest. They are doing it to attract the interest of other people. But if you reverse that, even though women doing it would be seen as a normal, perfectly fine thing, if you reverse that to the other side of everything, it's seen as almost bad and negative to.
Right. But then, social norms, if you ever listen to straight men playing Xbox, it
Yeah.
is the queerest sounding thing you've ever heard in your life. I lived with a straight man for 3 years and he was a gamer. And I got more pickup lines that were, I didn't ever use them. They were horribly inappropriate, but they talk so sexual to each other. I'm like, wow, you are way more gay than I am. I mean, the things that come out of their mouths are so inappropriately sexual towards each other. You would think that they were sleeping with each other. But it's, and that's just normal, locker room talk, Xbox talk
And
for
locker
them.
rooms, actually, even on for that matter. Like,
Yes.
it's,
Wow. Yeah. And so that's completely okay and normal.
and I mean, whenever you start talking about actually, locker rooms are kind of the almost equivalent, I want to say, except they're not trying to attract the attention of the women in that situation because, I mean, locker rooms would be all guys. But like, guys will get borderline sexual with each other in locker rooms with
Not
with the towels
borderline,
and
completely like verbally sexual with each other, but it's their safe space. So they're safe to say these things.
there's a joke, so it's never like
Yeah, it's
societally bad, if that makes sense.
right. It's their safe space to say that stuff. And so it's not, but they wouldn't say that, somewhere else because they're safe to say that. So, I want to say that men are, saying it more. And so times are changing more. And I didn't realize that much until I moved in with Josh and her. And so, I mean, he calls his best friend his husband and me his husband. He thinks that has a whole relationship with me and his other best friend. And he's the only man that I'll let me call girl because, I used to be a girl, but I mean, if he called me boy instead of girl, I'd be highly offended because, I'm his husband and he's like, hey, girl. And, that is just our relationship. And he'll say all the time when I cook for him, I want to put your meat in my mouth. And that is just completely appropriate for him. And because that's the shit that he says. I mean, it's, that's just two guys saying shit. And, that's just dirty talk that, he says. You'd be surprised. But anyway, so then we go on to the 2S, which is two spirit. And indigenous, they have Native American Alaskan tribes, they have another gender, which is two spirit, which is a celebrated gender. And because it's celebrated, because how cool are you that your spirit is both male and female? And you are special if you have the spirit of a man and a woman. You are blessed to have the spirit of a man and a woman, a third gender. So you are a blessed member of the tribe to have that special gender. And so you are celebrated. And it's so cool. You all should really look into it. A two spirit is so celebrated in the community. So then we go on, the P is pansexual. But I want to talk about a different P. I want to talk about polyamorous. I'm poly. Whenever I talk about poly, I explain it with my family. So just so I can explain it a little bit, my family dates differently. Poly relationships are different with different polycules. But my relationship is I'm in a relationship with 4 people and I live with one. And the other 3 are more non-sexual relationships, but they're friends that I value more than friends. And so they're long-term relationships that I've had more than 3 or 4 years. My youngest relationship is the one that I'm living with. We've been together in 2 days from this filming for 2 years. And that's the one that I have a sexual relationship. I guess that's the easiest way to put. They're all my partners. And more stereotypical relationship with, I guess. He's got a partner. He's got two other partners, one on the East Coast and one in town. And we date separately. We're not all together having, group intercourse together. It's not some freaky thing. We all date separately. We all have our, independent relationships. We, practice safety. It's just the idea of openly loving and not restricting your love to one person. And that's the idea of polyamorous. It's an umbrella term for referring to people are openly consensually having relationships with multiple people at the same time. And then you go on to D, which is the demisexuals and the demiromantics. So we talked about those. But the next term I want to talk about is down low. And this is a term that's in the community. And that's when it describes a man who has sex with other men while marrying or dating women and identifying as heterosexual.
Wait, is that strictly a man, or is that...
It's strictly a man.
So there's a different terminology for women that do that?
There is no term for women that do it. Yeah, there has been no term for women that do it. It's a male term because it's used so much for the men in the community, and so much that the Grindr actually broke down at the Republican National Convention last year.
I heard about that.
Yeah, 3 days in a row, a crashed Grindr. This is when men secretly have sex with other men. But if you identify as heterosexual, that is your identity. I will not take away your identity of heterosexual. However, I will put a personal advisement that the queer community should stop having down low sex with people who are against the community. And that's my personal, advisement of that. If you're going to have sex with somebody that's against the community, that's at your own risk. The next term we talked about a little bit, but it's MSM and WSW. And that's because down low, with the men, and, there's no term with the women just because it doesn't happen as much, but it does happen, but it happens so much that the medical community had to come up with terms to record it medically. And so they record it in their medical terminology, men who have sex with men and women who have sex with women, but identify as heterosexual. So that's MSM and WSW. And then a couple more terms we have is heteronormativity. And that's just the assumption that in institutions that being straight and cis is normal, and that's not true. Normal is a cycle on a washing machine. Another term is in the closet. If somebody's in the closet, leave them there. Do not out people, and out means telling people their secret of they're in the closet. That's dangerous. If somebody is in the closet, which means they're not openly labeled in the community, don't give people's labels out unless they want them out, especially in today's society. Respect people's labels and how open they are about them for safety reasons. And so if there's any other labels that we did not cover, reach out, because there are labels that I might not have covered, but those are the basic terms, and we wanted to just go over them in case.
And those are even just sexual identity labels, because then you even start getting into other stuff. Once you start getting in deeper than that, then there's even sub-labels, and
there's sub-labels like bears, and I mean, the community can go really, really deep. But we just wanted to get into like labels in case you're curious about the community and you want to find your place, I guess would be a good way. And
sometimes a label is a good place to start. But with all that being said, that's probably a good place for us to end off this week. So I'm glad everybody came around. Don't forget to subscribe and like to be notified for whenever more content comes out. And with that being said, we will see you guys next week.
All right. Have a good one.